Commander Alina Vasquez stood at the viewing window of the GSS Horizon's edge and watched the planet grow larger. Belthera was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight. The entire world seemed to be made of crystal. Mountains sparkled like diamonds under twin suns. Rivers of liquid silver cut through forests of glass trees. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, and it terrified her. Humanity had only been traveling the stars for 200 years. In that time, they had learned one important truth. The galaxy was old, and humans were very, very young. Species had risen and fallen for millions of years before the first human learned to make fire. The Volthani sovereignty was one of the oldest powers still standing. They had watched empires crumble. They had seen stars die, and for reasons no one fully understood, they had finally agreed to meet with humans. Alina turned away from the window and looked at her team. There were only 5 of them. Lieutenant Chen handled communications. Dr. Okonkwo was their cultural specialist. Sergeant Torres provided security, though his single sidearm felt laughable given where they were going. And young Ensign Patel carried their gifts, carefully chosen items meant to show respect without appearing desperate. Remember the briefing, Alina said? The Velthani communicate through telepathy. They can sense emotions, maybe even read surface thoughts. Keep your minds calm. Think of Stillwater. Stillwater? Torres repeated. He did not look calm. Right. While surrounded by aliens who think we're barely more evolved than bacteria, they don't think that, Dr. Okonkwo said. Then she paused. Well, some of them probably think that. But the Queen agreed to see us. That means something. Alina wished she shared the doctor's optimism. The truth was, no one knew why Queen Sarathel had finally opened her doors to humanity. The Velthani had refused contact with dozens of species far more advanced than humans. They were isolationists. They watched the galaxy from their crystal towers and rarely bothered to participate in its affairs. The shuttle descended through clouds that shimmered with internal light. When they broke through, Alina saw the palace for the first time. It rose from the planet's surface like a frozen explosion, all sharp angles and impossible curves. Towers reached toward the sky in defiance of gravity. Bridges of pure light connected structures that floated without any visible support. They landed on a platform of polished white stone. When the shuttle doors opened, the air hit Alina like a wave. It smelled sweet, like flowers she had no name for. The temperature was perfect. Not too warm, not too cold. Even the breeze felt gentle against her skin. A delegation waited for them. The Velthani were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift colors in the light. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with depths that made Alina feel like she was looking into space itself. They wore robes of material that flowed like water, and when they moved, they seemed to glide rather than walk. The leader of the delegation stepped forward. He did not speak out loud, but Alina heard his voice clearly in her mind. It was cold and precise, like ice forming on glass. Welcome to Velthera, humans. I am High Steward Krelver. You will follow me. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not approach any member of the royal family. You will not touch anything. You will not wander. Do you understand these rules? Alina nodded. We understand and will comply. Krelver studied her for a long moment. His expression revealed nothing. Then he turned and began walking toward the palace. Alina and her team followed. The interior of the palace was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Corridors stretched in directions that should not have been possible. Rooms opened onto vistas of other worlds. Other times. Alina saw a window that looked out onto a forest of blue trees under a purple sky. She saw another that showed a city burning, while ships fell from the heavens. She forced herself to keep walking, to keep her eyes forward, to think of still water. They entered a massive chamber. It was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Alina recognized some from her training. The insectoid Crixel stood in clusters, their compound eyes reflecting the light. The Morvathi towered over everyone else, their gray skin covered in ritual scars. The crystallines hummed quietly in their corner, their silicon bodies vibrating with frequencies that made Lena's teeth ache. All of them had been courting the Velthani for centuries. All of them wanted access to Velthani technology, Velthani trade routes, Velthani protection, and all of them were now looking at the humans with expressions ranging from amusement to contempt. Alina kept her head high. She had faced worse. During the Kepler colony disaster, she had held a station together with nothing but determination and duct tape. During the first contact with the Rethani, she had talked down a fleet commander who wanted to glass Earth's moon. She could handle a few judgmental stares. The crowd parted. And Alina saw the throne for the first time. Queen Sarathel was ancient and beautiful. Her skin shimmered with colors that had no names in any human language. Her eyes held the weight of thousands of years. She sat on a throne of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, and beside her stood a smaller throne where a child sat watching the proceedings with wide, curious eyes. The Crown Prince Kelthor was small, even by human standards. He could not have been more than 5 years old by his species' reckoning. His skin had not yet learned to shift colors properly, and it flickered between blue and silver like a broken display. His eyes were too large for his face, and they darted around the room, taking in everything. One of the Morvathi ambassadors was speaking now, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. He was presenting gifts, making promises, talking about the long friendship between their peoples. Alina barely heard him. Her attention had been caught by the child. Kelthor was not watching the Morvathi. He was watching her. Alina quickly looked away. She remembered the rules. Do not approach the royal family. Do not interact with the Crown Prince. Any unsanctioned contact was a grave offense. She thought of still water. She thought of calm. She thought of nothing at all, but she could still feel his eyes on her. The Morvathi finished speaking. The Crixel took their turn. Then the Crystallines. Each presentation was more elaborate than the last. Each species tried to outdo the others with their gifts and their promises. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Alina stepped forward. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. She presented their gifts. Samples of Earth art. Recordings of human music. A small device that projected images of human history. She spoke briefly about humanity's hopes for friendship and cooperation. She did not make promises she could not keep. When she finished, the queen inclined her head slightly. It was not acceptance. It was not rejection. It was acknowledgement that humanity existed. Alina supposed that was something. She stepped back to join her team. The ceremony continued. More species came forward. More speeches were made. Alina let her attention drift slightly, thinking about the report she would have to write. Then she heard the gasp. It came from everywhere at once, a collective intake of breath from hundreds of beings. Alina's head snapped up. She saw something that made her blood turn cold. The Crown Prince had left his throne. He was walking down the steps of the royal platform, his small feet moving with purpose. Attendants reached for him, but he slipped past their hands. Guards moved to intercept him, but he simply walked around them. His mother had risen from her throne. Her eyes wide with something Alina could not read. The child walked past the Morvathi delegation without a glance. He walked past the Crixel without slowing. He walked past the Crystallines as if they were not there. He walked through the center of the chamber, while every being in the room watched in frozen shock, and then he stopped. He stopped directly in front of Alina Vasquez. The commander looked down at the small alien child looking up at her. She did not move. She did not breathe. She had no idea what to do. Kelthar raised his small hand and placed it. Gently against her palm, something warm touched her mind. It was not words. It was not images. It was a feeling, pure and simple, like sunlight breaking through clouds. She understood it perfectly, even though no one had spoken. Safe. You feel safe. The queen's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Every being in the chamber heard her words, and every being understood their weight. My son has chosen. Lena stared at the child holding her hand. She stared at the queen descending from her throne. She stared at the hundreds of alien faces now turned toward her with expressions of fury and disbelief. She had no idea what had just happened, but she knew. With absolute certainty, Her life had just changed forever. The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices filled Elena's mind. Dozens of them, hundreds of them, all shouting at once. She could not understand most of them, but she felt their emotions clearly. Anger, outrage, disbelief. The Morvathi ambassador was pointing at her with one massive gray finger, his face twisted with fury. The Crixel were clicking their mandibles in what sounded like mechanical laughter. The crystallines had begun vibrating at a frequency that made the floor shake. Through it all, the small hand in Elena's palm did not let go. Queen Sarathel raised one elegant hand, and silence fell instantly. It was not natural silence. Elena felt something press against her. Mind, gentle but firm, like a hand covering her mouth. The queen had silenced the entire room with her will alone. "The choosing has occurred," the queen said. Her voice was calm, but Elena heard something underneath it. Surprise, perhaps, or wonder. "It cannot be undone." The Morvathi ambassador stepped forward. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, and his ritual scars seemed to writhe in the light. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. The choosing has always gone to members of the elder races, to give this honor to a human. A species barely out of their cradle world is an insult to every civilization that has stood by the Velthani sovereignty for millennia." Several delegates made sounds of agreement. Elena saw nodding heads and bobbing antennae throughout the crowd. The queen turned her ancient eyes to the ambassador. "The choosing is not mine to give, Ambassador Krathvalum. It belongs to my son alone. It has always been so. Would you have me tell the crown prince that his choice was wrong?" The ambassador's mouth opened, then closed. Elena almost felt sorry for him. The queen had trapped him with a simple question. To say yes would be to insult the future ruler of the Velthani. To say no would be to accept what had happened. "I would have you consider the implications," Krathvalum said carefully. "The humans are unknown, unpredictable. They have been among the stars for barely 2 centuries. What could such a species possibly offer the crown prince?" Elena felt something stir in her chest. It was not anger exactly. It was something older. Something that had kept humanity alive through ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended them. Pride, defiance, the refusal to be dismissed. But before she could speak, the child at her side did something remarkable. Kelthar turned to face the Morvathi ambassador. He was tiny compared to the massive alien, barely reaching the creature's knee. But he stood straight, and when he opened his mouth, he spoke. Actually spoke. Out loud. With words, "She is warm." The room went still in a different way. Elena saw shock ripple through the crowd. She saw the queen's hand fly to her chest. She saw attendants exchange glances filled with disbelief. Dr. Okonkwo leaned close to Elena and whispered, "The briefing said the crown prince hadn't spoken since his father died 2 years ago." Not a single word. Elena looked down at the boy. He was still facing the Morvathi ambassador, his small chin raised in defiance. His hand was still wrapped around hers. "She is warm," Kelthar repeated. "Her mind is warm. Not like yours." He pointed at the ambassador. "Yours is cold. Full of wanting. Full of taking. Hers is warm. She wants nothing. She takes nothing. She is just ... warm." The queen descended the remaining steps and approached Elena. Up close, she was even more overwhelming. Her presence filled the space around her like perfume, like music, like something Elena had no words for. The queen studied her with those ancient, depthless eyes. "My son has not spoken in 2 years," the queen said softly. "Not to me. Not to his tutors. Not to the finest healers in the sovereignty. And now he speaks to defend a human he has known for less than a minute." "I don't understand what's happening," Elena admitted. "Neither do I," the queen replied. "And that is precisely why it matters." She turned to address the chamber. "The choosing stands. The human commander, Elena Vasquez, will serve as guardian to the crown prince for the traditional period of 5 cycles. She will reside in the palace. She will have access to all areas permitted to guardians. Any who interfere with her duties will answer to me personally." The Morvathi ambassador made one final attempt. Your Majesty, surely the humans' government must agree to this. She is a military officer. She has duties, responsibilities. The Queen looked at Alina. Do you accept the choosing, Commander? Elena's mind raced. 5 cycles. She had no idea how long that was in Earth years. Her career, her ship, her crew, everything she had worked for, all of it hung in the balance. One word could end the most important diplomatic mission in human history. One word could begin something that no human had ever experienced. She looked down at Kelthor. The boy looked back at her with eyes that held more loneliness than any child should know. He had not let go of her hand. He had not stopped touching her warmth. I accept, Alina said. The words echoed through the chamber. Alina heard her team react behind her, heard Lieutenant Chen's sharp intake of breath, and Torres's quiet curse. She would deal with them later. Right now, she had a promise to keep. Queen Sarathel nodded slowly. Then it is done. High Steward Krelver will show you to your quarters. Your ship may remain in orbit for 3 days to handle the transition. After that, you will be under the protection and authority of the Velthani sovereignty. Alina nodded. She tried to project calm confidence, though inside she was a storm of uncertainty. I understand, Your Majesty. I will serve your son with honor. See that you do, human. The Queen's voice held neither warmth nor coldness. It was simply a statement of fact. The last guardian who failed in her duties spent eternity in a crystal prison, conscious but unable to move. The Velthani take the choosing very seriously. Lena swallowed. Noted. The formal ceremony ended. The delegates began to disperse, though many lingered to stare at Alina with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. The Morvathi ambassador paused as he passed, his massive form casting a shadow over her. You have made enemies today, human, he said quietly. Powerful enemies. The Morvathi do not forget those who have stolen what should have been ours. I didn't steal anything, Alina replied. I was standing still. Your quarrel is with a 5-year-old child. Something flickered in the ambassador's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she would speak back to him. Then he moved on without another word. Kelthor tugged at Elena's hand. She looked down at him, and for the first time, she saw him smile. It was a small smile, hesitant, like he had forgotten how. You're not afraid of him, the boy said. Everyone is afraid of the Morvathi, but you're not. Where I come from, we learn early that size doesn't determine strength, Alina said. Some of the scariest things on my planet were very small. Bacteria, viruses, mosquitoes. What are mosquitoes? Tiny flying insects that drink blood. Kelthor's eyes went wide with fascination. Your planet has blood-drinking insects. And you survived? How? Alina laughed despite herself. We're stubborn. We don't know when to give up. The boy considered this seriously. I think I would like to learn more about your planet and your mosquitoes. Will you teach me? That's what guardians do, isn't it? High Steward Krelver appeared beside them. His face was a careful mask of neutrality, but Alina could feel his disapproval radiating like heat from a fire. If the human will follow me, he said, the words carrying an edge of ice. The Crown Prince must return to his tutors. Kelthor's grip tightened on Elena's hand. I want to stay with her, Your Highness. There are protocols. ... I am the Crown Prince. The boy's voice was stronger now, more confident than it had been minutes ago. And I want to stay with my guardian. She can come to my lessons. Krelver looked like he had swallowed something sour. He glanced at the Queen, who was watching from a distance with an unreadable expression. Whatever silent communication passed between them, it ended with Krelver bowing stiffly, as Your Highness commands. This way, they walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Alina tried to memorize the route, but the palace defied logic. Hallways curved in impossible directions. Stairs led to floors that should not exist. She suspected that, without a guide, she could wander for years and never find her way out. The Morvathi have been trying to form an alliance with us for 600 years, Kelthor said suddenly. They want our dimensional technology. Father said they couldn't be trusted. Mother agrees, but she has to be polite because of politics. Your father sounds like he was wise. The boy was quiet for a moment. He used to tell me stories about the old wars, about the species that tried to conquer us and failed, about the ones who asked for help and received it. He said the hardest part of being a ruler was knowing the difference between the two. What do you think the difference is? Kelthar looked up at her with those two large eyes. Father said you could feel it. He said some minds were like open hands and some were like closed fists. You just had to learn to tell them apart. Alina thought about that. And my mind? Is it an open hand? Your mind is different, the boy said. It's like a warm fire on a cold night. It's like the feeling of being wrapped in something soft. It's like, he struggled for words. It's like coming home. Lena felt something catch in her throat. This child, this small alien prince who had lost his father and locked himself in silence for 2 years, had somehow looked into her mind and found something worth reaching for. I'll do my best to deserve that, she said quietly. They reached a set of ornate doors. Krelver opened them with a wave of his hand, revealing a classroom filled with floating displays and strange devices. Several Velthani tutors waited inside, their expressions carefully blank. Kelthar paused at the threshold. He finally released Elena's hand, but he looked back at her before entering. You'll come back? You won't leave? I'll come back. I promise. The boy nodded once, then walked into the classroom. The doors began to close behind him. In that moment, just before the doors sealed shut, Alina saw him glance back one more time. And she saw, clearly and unmistakably, that he was afraid, not of her, not of the lessons, but of something else. Something he had seen, something he had felt. The doors closed, and Alina was left alone with Krelver, in a growing certainty that she had just walked into something far more complicated than a simple diplomatic mission. Something was wrong in this crystal palace, and somehow a 5-year-old child had just made her responsible for fixing it. 3 weeks passed on Velthara. Alina learned that a Veltharni cycle was roughly equivalent to 2 Earth years. 5 cycles meant 10 years. 10 years in an alien palace, surrounded by beings who viewed her as something between a curiosity and an insult. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself settling into a routine. Every morning she woke in her quarters. The room was beautiful, but cold, all crystal walls and floating furniture. The palace provided everything she needed, but nothing she wanted. No pictures of home, no music from Earth, no food that tasted like anything familiar. She was comfortable and utterly alone, except for Kelthar. The boy sought her out constantly. He would appear at her door before the twin suns had fully risen, his small face bright with questions. He wanted to know everything about Earth, about humans, about the strange, violent, beautiful species that had crawled out of mud and reached for the stars. Alina told him about oceans. The boy had never seen liquid water in such quantities. She described waves crashing on beaches, fish swimming through coral reefs, whales singing songs that traveled for thousands of kilometers. Kelthar listened with his eyes wide, trying to imagine a world so different from his own. She told him about forests. Real forests, made of wood and leaves instead of crystal and light. She described the smell of pine trees after rain, the sound of wind moving through branches, the way sunlight filtered through canopy and dappled the ground below. The boy made her describe it again and again. She told him about snow, about mountains, about deserts and rivers and cities filled with millions of people living side by side. She told him about music and art and sports. She told him about families gathered around dinner tables, about children playing in parks, about old people telling stories to young ones, and slowly, carefully, Kelthar began to change. The boy who had not spoken for 2 years now talked constantly. His tutors reported that he was engaging with lessons again, asking questions, challenging assumptions. The healers who had worried about his mental state Al watched with amazement as he laughed at Elena's descriptions of mosquitoes and cats and other earth creatures, the queen noticed. Alina sometimes caught her watching from a distance, her ancient eyes fixed on the human who had somehow reached her son. But Sarathel never spoke to Alina directly. Whatever she thought, she kept it hidden behind walls of royal composure. Not everyone was pleased with Kelthar's recovery. Alina became aware of the hostility gradually. It started with small things. Her meals arrived cold, or not at all. Her schedule was changed without notice, causing her to miss important ceremonies. Doors that should have opened for her remained sealed. Messages she sent to her team in orbit went unanswered. High Steward Krelver was always polite when she complained, always apologetic, always promising to look into the matter. But nothing ever changed, and Alina began to suspect that the problems were not accidents. The other species in the palace were more direct in their displeasure. The Morvathi ambassador made it clear that she was not welcome at any gathering he attended. His people turned their backs when she passed. They spoke about her in their own language, knowing she could not understand, but certain she could hear the contempt in their voices. The Crixel were more subtle. They watched her with their compound eyes, tracking her movements through the palace. Alina sometimes found them standing in corridors she was about to walk through, forcing her to take longer routes. They never threatened her directly. They did not need to. Their presence was threat enough. Even some Velthani nobles made their feelings known. They would fall silent when she approached, then resume their telepathic conversations as soon as she passed. Alina could feel their thoughts brushing against her mind, always too fast and complex to understand, but always carrying the same message. You do not belong here. Alina bore it all with patience she did not know she possessed. She had survived worse. She had faced down pirates and plague and political enemies. She could handle cold shoulders and missed meals. But then the real problems began. It started one evening when Kelthar did not appear for their usual meeting. Alina waited in the garden where they always met, surrounded by flowers that sang when the wind touched them. An hour passed. Then two. The boy had never been late before. She went looking for him. The palace was vast, and she got lost twice, but eventually she found her way to his quarters. The guards at the door told her the prince was sleeping and could not be disturbed. Alina did not believe them, but she had no authority to demand entry. She waited outside all night. When morning came, Kelthar finally emerged. His face was pale. His eyes were red. He looked like he had not slept at all. What happened? Alina asked, kneeling to meet his eyes. The boy glanced at the guards. They were watching, their faces blank. "Walk with me," Kelthar whispered. They walked through the palace in silence until they reached a part Alina had never seen. It was older than the rest, the crystal darker and less perfect. The walls here did not glow with internal light. They absorbed it. "I saw something," Kelthar finally said. His voice was barely audible. "In someone's mind? I didn't mean to. I can't always control it." But they were close, and they were thinking so loudly. And He stopped. His small hands were trembling. "What did you see?" "They want to hurt Mother." The words came out in a rush. "They think she's weak. They think she's making the sovereignty weak by talking to lesser species. They want to make her go away and put someone else in charge. Someone who will make us strong again." Lena felt ice spread through her chest. Who were they? "I don't know. I couldn't see their face. Just their thoughts." They were in the palace. They were close to the throne room. They were so angry. So cold. Kelthar looked up at her with terrified eyes. "They want to kill her, Elena. They want to kill my mother." Lena's mind raced. She was a guardian. She had no authority here. She had no allies, no weapons, no way to investigate without drawing attention. If she went to the queen with accusations from a child's vision, she would be dismissed or worse. If she went to Krelver, he might be part of the conspiracy himself, but she could not do nothing. A child had trusted her with his worst fear. A child had asked her for help. She took Kelthar's hands in hers. They were so small, so fragile. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "You did the right thing telling me this. But we need to be smart. We need to find out who these people are before we can stop them. Do you understand?" The boy nodded. "I need you to keep acting normal. Go to your lessons. Eat your meals. Don't let anyone know you saw anything." "Can you do that?" "I'll try." And if you sense anything else, anything at all, you come to me immediately. Don't trust anyone else. Not the guards, not your tutors, not anyone. Only me. Okay?" Kelthar nodded again. Then he threw himself forward and wrapped his arms around her. Alina held him tightly, feeling his heart beating fast against her chest. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know. I'm scared too. But we're going to figure this out together. I promise." She meant it. She had no idea how she would keep that promise. She had no resources, no support, no understanding of palace politics. She was one human in a world of ancient telepaths who could crush her mind with a thought. But she had something they did not expect. She had survived 200 years of human evolution. 200 years of learning to adapt, to overcome, to find ways to win when winning should have been impossible. She had the stubbornness of a species that had refused to die when everything in the universe seemed designed to kill them, and she had a child's trust. That night, Alina began her investigation. She watched. She listened. She paid attention to the small details that others overlooked. Who spoke to whom? Who avoided whom? Who seemed nervous when the queen passed? Who seemed a little too calm? She was an outsider. Everyone knew it. Everyone dismissed her, and that, she realized, might just be her greatest advantage. No one watched the human. No one thought she mattered. They were about to learn. How wrong they were. Alina spent the next month becoming invisible. It was not hard. The palace staff already ignored her. The nobles pretended she did not exist. The guards looked through her as if she were made of glass. She used this to her advantage, moving through spaces no one thought to watch. Listening to conversations no one thought to hide. The Velthani communicated primarily through telepathy. But they still spoke aloud when they wanted to emphasize something, or when they were too emotional to maintain mental control. Alina learned to recognize the signs. A raised voice here. A flash of anger there. Fragments of words that slipped through their careful composure. She noticed. Patterns certain nobles always gathered in the same corner of the great hall during evening meals. They spoke in low tones, their heads bent together, their minds presumably linked in ways Alina could not perceive. When the queen passed, they fell silent and bowed with perfect respect. But Alina saw the way their eyes followed Sirathel. She saw the tension in their shoulders. She learned their names. Lord Vethmer, a thin male with scales that flickered between purple and black. Lady Siristel, an elderly female whose fingers were adorned with rings of captured starlight. Councillor Kralthon, who sat on the royal council and advised the queen on matters of security. 3 names. 3 potential conspirators. But Alina needed more than suspicion. She needed proof. She began tracking their movements. Lord Vethmer met regularly with the Crixel ambassador, always in private chambers where the walls were thick enough to block telepathic eavesdropping. Lady Sirestal received frequent messages from off-world, coded transmissions that the palace communication systems logged but did not translate. Councillor Kralthon had access to the queen's schedule, her security arrangements, her private quarters. Each piece of information was small on its own. Together, they formed a picture that made Alina's stomach turn. She needed help. She could not investigate alone, and she certainly could not confront 3 powerful Velthani nobles without support. But who could she trust? Krelver was too close to the throne, too likely to be compromised. The other servants feared their masters too much to risk involvement. The foreign delegates had their own agendas. There was only one person Alina could rely on, and he was 5 years old. Kelthar proved more useful than she expected. The boy could sense emotions, even if he could not read specific thoughts without close proximity. He began paying attention during council meetings, reporting to Alina which nobles felt satisfied when certain topics arose, which ones felt anxious, which ones felt guilty. Councillor Kralthon's mind feels like a locked door, Kelthar reported one evening. Like he's trying very hard to keep something hidden. It makes my head hurt to be near him. Wait! Can you tell what he's hiding? No, just that it's big. It's dark. Like a shadow in a bright room was not evidence, but it was confirmation. Kralthon was involved somehow. The question was how deep the conspiracy ran, and When they planned to act, Alina got her answer sooner than expected. 1 week before the Festival of Crystalline Dawn, the annual celebration of Velthani sovereignty, a message arrived at her quarters. It was anonymous, written on actual paper in a language she did not recognize. But when she touched it, words formed in her mind. They move at the festival. The queen will drink poisoned light. Find the source. Alina stared at the message until it dissolved into nothing. Someone in the palace knew about the conspiracy. Someone wanted to help. But who? And why contact her, of all people? She did not have time to wonder. The festival was in 7 days. She had 1 week to find proof and stop an assassination. Alina threw herself into the investigation with renewed intensity. She tracked the festival preparations, watching who handled what. The Velthani drank liquid light during their celebrations, a sacred substance produced by crystals at the heart of the palace. The process was guarded, but Alina found ways to observe it. 3 days before the festival, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Counselor Kralthon entering the crystal chamber where the sacred light was prepared. He had no official reason to be there. When he emerged, his hands were empty, but Alina noticed something different about the crystals themselves. A faint discoloration, a slight wrongness in their glow. She knew what she had to do. The night before the festival, Alina requested an audience with the queen. The request was denied, then denied again, then denied a third time. Alina kept requesting until finally, out of sheer frustration, Krelver granted her 5 minutes. Queen Sirathel received her in a private chamber overlooking the crystal gardens. The queen looked tired, Alina realized. The weight of her crown showed in the lines around her eyes, in the slight droop of her shoulders. "Speak quickly, human," Sirathel said. "I have little patience for guardian concerns tonight." Alina took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, there is a conspiracy to assassinate you at tomorrow's festival. The sacred light has been poisoned. I believe Counselor Kralthon is responsible, with support from Lord Vethmer and Lady Siristal." The queen's expression did not change. For a long moment, she simply looked at Alina with those ancient, unreadable eyes. "These are serious accusations," Sirathel said finally. "What evidence do you have?" "I saw Counselor Kralthon enter the crystal chamber without authorization. The crystals changed afterward. I have tracked the movements of the conspirators for weeks. They meet in secret with foreign delegates. They receive coded messages. They watch you with hatred they cannot fully hide. You saw. You tracked. You observed?" The queen's voice was flat. "You have no proof. Only the words of a human who has been here for mere weeks. Why should I believe you over nobles who have served me for centuries?" "Because your son told me about the conspiracy first," Alina said. "He sensed it in their minds. He came to me terrified because he saw someone thinking about killing his mother. I have spent every moment since then trying to verify what he felt." Something shifted in the queen's expression. For the first time, Alina saw emotion break through her composure. Kelthar sensed this. "Yes, Your Majesty." He couldn't identify the person directly, but he felt their intentions. Their hatred, their plans. Sirathel was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more personal. She could have ignored him. You could have dismissed a child's fears as imagination. You could have focused on your own survival in a palace that has shown you nothing but contempt. The queen met Alina's eyes. "Why didn't you?" Alina thought about the question. "Because where I come from, we don't abandon children who ask us for help. Even when helping them puts us at risk. Even when no one will thank us for it. That's not who we are. And what are you, Commander Vasquez? What are humans, truly? We're stubborn. We're fragile. We're barely out of our cradle, by your standards. But we don't give up on people who need us. We don't walk away from fights we believe in. We make promises to scared children, and we keep them." Delena straightened her spine. "Your son chose me for a reason, Your Majesty. He looked into my mind and found something worth trusting. I'm asking you to trust that too." The queen rose from her seat. She moved to a window and stood there, her reflection ghostly against the crystal. "I have known about the conspiracy for some time," she said quietly. "I have felt their thoughts brushing against my barriers, probing for weakness. I knew something was coming, but I did not know when or how. She turned back to Alina. You are the first person to bring me specifics. You, a human, an outsider, the one everyone in my court dismissed as irrelevant. Sometimes it helps to be underestimated.
Yes.
A ghost of a smile crossed the queen's face. It does. She moved to a crystal panel on the wall and touched it. The surface lit up, displaying names and images. Counselor Cralthan will be arrested within the hour. Lord Vethmer and Lady Ciristal will follow. The sacred light will be tested and purified. The festival will proceed, but with security measures no one will see coming. Alina felt relief wash through her. And the off-world connections? The Crixel will be dealt with diplomatically. We have no proof of direct involvement from any foreign power, but certain agreements will be ... reconsidered. The queen approached Alina, up close. She seemed less like an ancient goddess and more like a mother who had almost lost everything. You saved my life, Commander. You protected my son. You did these things while surrounded by those who wished you harm, with no resources except your own determination. The queen extended her hand in a human gesture that surprised Alina deeply. I find myself curious about this species that produces individuals like you. Alina took the queen's hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished glass. But the grip was firm, sincere. We are full of surprises, Your Majesty, as the queen said. I am beginning to understand that. The festival of crystalline dawn had never been more beautiful. Light danced through the great hall in patterns that defied description. Music that Alina felt more than heard filled the space, vibrating through the crystal floors and walls. Thousands of beings from dozens of species had gathered to witness the ancient ceremony. Unaware of how close it had come to becoming something very different, the conspirators had been arrested quietly in the night. Lord Vethmer went silently, his pride too great to let him beg. Lady Ciristal screamed accusations that no one listened to. Counselor Cralthan tried to fight and was subdued by guards, who had once trusted him with their lives. The queen had chosen exile over execution. It was a mercy that shocked the court. When the nobles questioned her decision, she simply said, I have learned that strength is not only found in punishment, sometimes it is found in the courage to show mercy. Alina stood near the back of the hall, watching the celebration unfold. She was still an outsider here, still the human who did not quite belong. But something had changed. Nobles who had ignored her now nodded when they passed. Guards who had blocked her path now stepped aside with respect. Servants who had delivered cold meals now brought her the finest dishes before anyone else. She had earned her place. Not through power or politics, but through something simpler, something human. Kelthar found her as the main ceremony began. The boy was dressed in formal robes that sparkled with captured starlight. His skin had finally learned to hold a steady color, a soft blue that reminded Alina of Earth's sky just before sunset. You look very official, Alina said. I feel very official. Need a face. These clothes are uncomfortable, and everyone keeps staring at me. They're supposed to stare. You're the crown prince. I know, he sighed, in a way that seemed far too old for his young face. I just wish they would stare because they liked me, not because of who my mother is. Lena knelt down to meet his eyes. Give them time. They're just starting to see who you really are. Who am I? You're kind. You're curious? You care about others, even when it's scary to show it. You're going to be a wonderful ruler someday, Kelthar, and you're going to make them all proud to serve you. The boy smiled. It was a real smile this time, not the hesitant thing she had seen on their first day together. Mother says the same thing. She says you're a good influence on me. I'm sure she means it as a compliment. She does. Althares' expression grew serious. She's different now. Softer. She listens more than she used to. Yesterday she asked me what I thought about the new trade agreements. She never asked me things like that before. Maybe she's learning too. From you. From everyone. Good leaders never stop learning. The ceremony reached its peak. Queen Sarathel raised a goblet of purified light above her head, and the entire hall fell silent. She spoke words in the ancient Velthani tongue, words that carried weight and meaning beyond their literal translation. Then she drank, and the light spread through her body, making her glow from within like a star. The crowd erupted in celebration. Lights flashed. Music soared. Beings of every shape and size danced and laughed and raised their own goblets to the sky. But the queen did not join the celebration. Instead, she made her way through the crowd toward Alina. Her path was not direct. Interrupted by nobles seeking her attention and ambassadors wanting a moment of her time. But Alina could see her destination clearly. Finally, they stood face to face. "Commander Vasquez," the queen said. Her voice was formal, but her eyes were warm. "I have an announcement to make. I wanted you to hear it first." Alina felt her pulse quicken. "Your Majesty, the Volthani Council has reviewed the diplomatic petition from Earth in light of recent events. I have personally recommended that humanity be granted full partner status in the Volthani Accord." Lena's breath caught. Partner status. It was more than anyone had dared hope for. Full access to Volthani technology, trade routes, and protection. Humanity would leap forward centuries in a single moment. "Your Majesty, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. This is not a reward for services rendered. It is recognition of what I have seen in you, and through you, in your species." The queen placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "You taught me something, Commander. You showed me that true strength is not measured in years of existence or advancement of technology. It is measured in the courage to stand for what is right, even when surrounded by those who would tear you down." "I was just doing my job," Alina said. "Protecting my charge." "You were doing far more than that, and we both know it." The queen smiled, an expression that transformed her ancient face into something almost warm. "My son chose well. The choosing has never been wrong, but it has never been so dramatically right either." The announcement was made later that evening. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered. Some muttered. The Morvathi ambassador left without a word, his massive form disappearing through the crystal doors like a storm retreating over the horizon. But Alina barely noticed. She was too busy watching Kelthar. The boy had taken the speaking platform. He stood before thousands of beings, his small figure almost lost against the vastness of the hall. But his voice carried clearly, projected by crystal amplifiers, translated into 100 languages. "I want to thank my guardian," he said. "Commander Alina Vasquez came to our world as a stranger. She was ignored and dismissed and treated poorly by many who should have known better. But she never gave up. She never stopped trying to help. She never broke her promises to me." He paused, looking out over the crowd. "My father used to tell me that the measure of a person is not how they behave when things are easy. It is how they behave when things are hard." Alina showed me what that means. She taught me about her planet, her species, her people. She taught me that being small does not mean being weak. She taught me that kindness is not the same as softness. His eyes found Alina in the crowd. "She taught me to speak again. And the first thing I want to say now that everyone can hear me is thank you. Thank you for being my guardian. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for saving my mother's life." The applause started slowly. Then it grew. Then it became a roar that shook the crystal walls and echoed through the palace like thunder. Alina felt tears on her cheeks and did not bother to wipe them away. The remaining cycles of her guardianship passed quickly after that. Alina taught Kelthar about human history, human culture, human values. The boy absorbed everything with endless enthusiasm. He learned about democracy and voting. He learned about civil rights and social progress. He learned about the long, painful, beautiful story of a species that kept reaching for something better, even when it hurt. In return, he taught her about Volthani philosophy, their understanding of consciousness and connection, their belief that all minds were part of a greater whole. Elena's non-telepathic brain could not grasp everything, but she understood enough to know that there was wisdom in it. When her final day came, the entire court gathered to see her off. It was a ceremony usually reserved for visiting heads of state, not departing guardians. But nothing about Elena's time on Velthera had been usual. The queen presented her with a crystal that contained a fragment of Velthera's heartlight. "So that you will always have a piece of our world with you," Sir Athel said. The nobles she had once distrusted now bowed with genuine respect. Even some of the foreign delegates approached to offer congratulations on her species' new status, but it was Kelthor's farewell that stayed with Alina. The boy ran to her as she prepared to board her shuttle, just as he had run to her on the day they met. He wrapped his arms around her waist and held on tight. "You'll come back, won't you?" he asked. The question was the same one he had asked years ago on the first day of their strange partnership. Alina knelt down. She looked into those large, dark eyes that had once been so full of loneliness and now shone with confidence and hope. "Whenever you need me," she said. "I promise." Kelthor nodded. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small crystal sphere. Inside it, light danced in patterns that Alina recognized as words. "I made this for you," he said, "so you won't forget me." "I could never forget you." "I know." He placed the sphere in her hand. "But now you have proof." Lena laughed through her tears. She hugged the boy one last time, then stood and walked toward the shuttle. She did not look back until she was at the door. Kelthor stood where she had left him, his small figure framed by the crystal towers of his home. He raised one hand in farewell. Alina raised hers in return, as the shuttle lifted off and Velthara shrank beneath her. She heard the Queen's voice one last time, carried on frequencies that should not have been able to reach her. "We spent millennia searching the stars for strength, and it was hiding in the most fragile species we had ever met." Alina smiled and watched the crystal world disappear among the stars. She was going home, but part of her would always remain here in this strange and beautiful place, with the child who had looked into her mind and found something worth choosing. That was the human way. They left pieces of themselves wherever they went, and somehow those pieces always grew into something wonderful.